Alright, so today we'll actually be discussing about the Pinocchio movie from the 1940 and the Netflix one. So eventually, this story was based on an 1883 story. You know, it is actually from the Italian children's novel by Carlo Collodi. It was the second animated feature to be produced by Disney. So the first movie was actually Snow White, and she was the first princess to be announced in 1937. This movie was actually made in 1940 as well in the United States, and it's 88 minutes. So eventually, this story was about the old Italian woodcarver named Geppetto. He carves a wooden puppet named Pinocchio, but in the Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Geppetto actually has a son named Carlo. However, during the World War I in Italy, Carlo eventually picks up the pine cone. When he manages to get back to his father Geppetto, Carlo is immediately killed by the bomb by the Austro-Hungarian force. Geppetto had honored his memory by planting a pine cone that Carlo had found for him for his grave and refuses to move on after the death for over 20 years. There was an anthropomorphic cricket named Sebastian J. Cricket, but in the Disney movie, it is actually Jimmy Cricket as well. It takes up the residence, resulting in a pine tree. When Geppetto had subsequently cut the pine tree down for a drunken fit rage to make a new sun, he passes out drunk. The puppet was unfinished, but the wooden sprite. But this movie was apparently the Blue Fairy. The Blue Fairy decided to make Pinocchio come to life. So that's what happened. So during that time, Pinocchio would normally lie. His nose would grow big, his nose would seriously grow big. If you don't know what I mean, alright? So eventually, there were some differences and similarities between the Pinocchio movie. There was a Geppetto, there was a Geppetto. But also there were some differences, such as Geppetto losing his son in the Netflix movie Pinocchio. So eventually, this place actually does take place in Italy, So in the ending of the Netflix movie, Geppetto dies, leaving Pinocchio, the wooden boy, behind. But Pinocchio doesn't get turned into a real boy, He decides to stay the same as it is. While in the Disney movie, Pinocchio gets turned into a real boy by the Blue Fairy after Geppetto grants one wish. Also for that, Pinocchio actually made friends with Gideon and Hostess Simon, if I'm not mistaken. I know this is an old Disney movie from the 1940s, and it's like 83 years old. And I actually watched the movie before, and I have a puppet right here on my windowsill. Now this puppet doesn't look exactly the same as the Disney Pinocchio because one, this Pinocchio actually does have overalls. It doesn't have the same color as the one in the Disney movie, It doesn't. Okay, so actually Pinocchio was actually made by Disney, while this one was actually made by Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. The Pinocchio one is actually made of wood, while the other one has clothes and overalls. This one doesn't have clothes because the puppet was left unfinished. However, the blue sprite turned Pinocchio to a real boy. So Pinocchio apparently made friends. The Blue Fairy only did that to turn Pinocchio to a real boy. While in the Netflix movie, Pinocchio didn't get turned into a real boy. In the end, Geppetto dies, But in the Disney movie, he doesn't. So eventually, there were some differences and similarities between the Disney Pinocchio and the Guillermo del Toro's video. I'm so sorry if I can't pronounce it right, because I am bad at this. Okay, so anyways, that's all for now, and this is me signing off.